a slowdown in labor force quality. That's the slowdown in the rate of growth of education. That's going to suggest that overall the wage growth is going to slow down by around a half a percentage point each year from now on as the quality of the labor force slows down, growth and quality. We're also finding that American society is becoming polarized by education. You know, it's a well-kept secret, but you know what the Gini coefficient is of Mexico? Does anybody happen to know what the Gini coefficient is of Mexico, just off the top of your head? You don't really have to know it. It's the same as the US. It's about 0.45. Very high. You think of that as a very unequal society, and we've become that. That's what we are. It's a kind of an amazing statistic. So we have more college graduates and we have more dropouts. And we have to learn that essentially more than smarts is required for success, and skill gaps are basically traced to early years. Now, I haven't really developed this, and if Charles Murray were in the room, he would argue, well, the early emergence of the skill gap is simply a measure of genetic differences in groups. Some groups are inferior. They're born inferior. They die inferior. And what I've tried to suggest to you is no, we can see that through remediation and through these interventions that people who start with adverse environments can in fact be restored, in fact in some scenarios to full functionality in the society. So in fact the argument that it's genetic just simply misses a lot of recent work and a lot of evidence. So it's also the case that schools and tuition do not matter as much as we think. I mean, we're here in a school, we all think the schooling is important. Schooling is important. But when we think about the sources of inequality in American society today, we've known for 40 years since the early Coleman report. Coleman showed 1966 that in fact, if we looked at what was the cause of the difference in test scores among schools, it wasn't pupil-teacher ratios, it wasn't whether or not the library was big or small, it had to do with family backgrounds of the parents. That was a fact. We just have a much more refined understanding of that. Late remediation is possible, but it's not as effective. It can work, but it's very costly. And so what I would argue is that social policy really should take some of these lessons into account. That we should learn that the early years are manipulable. I'm not pretending that we know everything about this or even what an optimal policy could be. I suspect that all these programs that have been tried are interesting, but you could probably do a lot better than we've done in the past. But what I do want to suggest is that we think about policy in a very different way. And this is quite different, I think, from what you see even in economics courses. Even today, I bet at Washington State, at the University of Chicago, at Harvard, any place. And the reason is we spend so much time thinking about education being formal classroom schooling. And what we really need to understand is that it's the family, the environment that supports this learning, and in fact these early factors that play such a powerful role. And I think if we actually fully digest all this, we'll think about public policy in a very different way. So thank you very much for the invitation to speak here.
We do have some time for questions, and in fact, Professor Heckman is very interested in questions. And as the Master of Ceremonies, I'll take the prerogative to ask the first one. That is, Professor Heckman, if you were the advisor to Clinton, Obama, Giuliani, pick your favorite candidate.
Obama's my neighbor, so I guess I should probably pick him.
What would you tell them about the policy? What should they be telling us?
Well, I didn't pick Obama at random because actually, not only is my neighbor, he's 2 blocks away, but he also he issued a statement, which I had a little small hand in writing, last Tuesday, or Tuesday before last in New Hampshire, where he incorporated some of this ideas. And it's radical. If you look at some of the other proposals,